Good blessed, well, I guess a few minutes after midnight, October the 25th, 2021. It's about 12:03 a.m. in the morning. It's Monday morning, a little after midnight. I meant to finish this here. This is part 2 of my son, Bryan Lamar John, speaking to me from the dead. This big old folder here is the thing that they did in what they call the Carbondale Police Department, and the prosecuting attorney called a death investigation. But I greet all of you all with the universal greetings of peace, and the blessings of God be with you. I just want to show you some more lies. This document here is almost like a Hollywood script, fiction and maybe some truth. But I want to show you how the Carbondale Police Department put this here together to try to clean up a homicide. But see, when you lie, you got to continue to lie. And what they did in here now, I'm finna tell you something what the first officer on the scene, allegedly the first officer, he said he was the first officer on the scene of my son's lynching or hanging in Carbondale, Illinois. I ain't gonna say their name, but I'm giving them a little, they watches my YouTube videos and see ain't no way they can change this now. Because the one that wrote this here, he arrived on the scene, according to him, on 3/19/21, March the 19th, 2021 at 13:27, which would be, that's military time, it would be 1:27 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, I'm not going to say his name, but this what he said now. He said, on March the 19th, 2021, at approximately 13:27, 1:27 p.m. hours, I, Officer Blank, was dispatched to 400 North Oakland Street to a report of a person hanging outside an apartment. That's what he said. Now, note down what he said. He was dispatched there too. A person hanging outside of an apartment. Okay? He said upon arrival. Listen to what he said upon arrival. Now, he's the first one. This is the first one he wrote. See, it wasn't coinciding totally with the rest of these police officers. They put like about 6, 7 of them on here. These is educated white men and women. You see what I'm saying? No disrespect to white people, period. You see what I'm saying? But this is these is people that told me that they are doctors and say that they have 10 years experience. But let me show you how I don't have a doctor's degree. I have a associate's degree in liberal studies. You see what I'm saying? I have a master's degree as being an ambassador of Jesus Christ. Dispatch. You see what I'm saying? To expose people like this here. I don't have to have it written down. I got it written down up here. Let me tell you what my brother Malcolm X said in one of his quotes that I love. May he rest in peace. When the mind is a weapon, you're never unarmed. I'm not unarmed. I'm armed. I'm not unarmed. Let me show you what he said. Upon arrival, I pulled into the parking lot on the west side of the building and was flagged down by resident of blank. They got him blanked out, but I know who it is because I talked to him. From the outside balcony. That's in the back parking lot. My son was on the front side of the building up on the 3rd floor hanging. I entered the western stairway. Now, this is the first one on the scene. And cut through an apartment blank to the resident of blank from the outside balcony. Pay close attention, y'all. These is these scholars. These is these racist white supremacists that's running the police department. Show you how educated they is. Okay. I entered the western stairway and cut through apartment blank to the resident of blank from the outside balcony. I entered, let me see. Yeah, I entered, where was that? I entered the western stairway and cut through the, through the eastern, to the eastern stairwell as guided by the attendant of blank. I was ushered to the stairwell outside of the eastern door of blank stairwell door approximately the same time blank, which is the EMT, the railing above, let me see. Let me get it to the eastern door of the blank. I got to keep it. And saw a black male hanging from the railing above me. Jackson County Ambulance Service EMT blank blank, I ain't gonna say his name, arrived. Now that's just one EMT now. Arrived through the eastern stairwell door at approximately the same time. The police, this the first one on the scene, saying one EMT arrived through the other door, because it's two ways to enter. The other door, they did it simultaneously at the same time. Now see, his report wasn't right for the commanding sergeant, and he made him do another one, more detailed. But listen to the rest of it. Blank, the EMT checked the male's neck. Sure, they ain't educated as far as saying palpated the male's carotid pulse in the neck. You know, the police supposed to know this here. But in the neck, determined him to not have a pulse and to be cold to the touch. I looked at the black male face and recognized him as Bryan L. Johns. Now listen to that real good. He said he looked at the black male and recognized him as my son, Bryan Lamar Johns. He didn't have to call the sergeant, or the sergeant didn't call him, but you're going to see later that the sergeant lied, and he said he told them something to make sure he can identify. But you see, this man said one EMT came through another door. Not that he pushed something to let him in. He came to another door and they got up there simultaneously. Now, let me see if I want to read any more of this here. No, I don't even want to read. This is the first officer on the scene. Now you keep in mind what this one said. Now, here's another one. Now, the first one call was what? Do y'all remember? Somebody was hanging. Now, this is another one. Now, tell me this here. If two police run into the same thing at the same time, they should have the same reports. Listen to this one. Guess what time he made it there? March the 19th, 2021. Guess what time? 13:27, the exact same time this other one that just had this one here. Now you heard what he said. Now let's listen to what this one said that made it at the same time, but he didn't see him and they didn't see each other. Listen. On March the 19th, 2021, at approximately 13:21 hours. But he got on here 13:27. At approximately 13:21 hours, Carbondale police officer blank blank was dispatched to 400 North Oakland regarding an attempted suicide. There's a big difference in what he just said. The one who said he was the first one on the scene. Now this is in black and white. But one thing that they didn't do when they put their name down here, it got a place for the date and time. They didn't put it there. When it went down here on the left, the right hand side, the one who have to approve they report, he got his name. But neither one of them, they got their badge number, but they don't have no date on here. But this got a date up here, but it's supposed to be a date down here. But listen here, he was called for attempted suicide. This one here was called for a person hanging. You see what I'm saying? Maybe they was in different countries, but these is educated white supremacists. Okay, now upon arrival, he saw Jackson County Ambulance. Now, he said he saw him. I saw Jackson County Ambulance personnel entering the northeast common entrance door railing. To the stairway. Now, you see this? You see what he's saying? I followed the EMTs. How in the hell is he gonna follow the EMTs? He's saying EMTs, plural. He said singular. How in the hell is he gonna follow the EMTs when one of the EMTs come upstairs on the 3rd floor and entered the area where my son was hanging, according to him, the first one on the scene, simultaneously? He came through one door and the EMT came through another. Now listen, I followed the EMTs upstairs and saw the legs of a person hanging from the 3rd floor railing. I ascended the stairs and saw a black male hanging from the railing by a cloth belt. The belt was looped around the male's neck through a metal buckle with the end tied to a knot on top of the 3rd floor railing. The male was clenching a railing stringer with his left hand, and his right arm was outstretched between the two stringers. They talking about between the bars, with his right elbow against the bottom of the rail. Listen to this. One of the EMTs informed me the male was not breathing. You didn't hear that from this guy here, the first one on the scene. Now listen. Had no pulse. He said he not breathing, had no pulse, and was cold to the touch. Now look what he say. We get into a singular, not plural. An EMT attached it to ECG pads, the electro pads, into the male's body and confirmed the male was deceased. I tentatively identified the male from previous contacts as Bryan Johns. Carbondale police officer such and such, the first one here, he confirmed to this one here the deceased was Bryan Johns based on a unique tattoo on his forehead. I ain't gonna read no more of his because you see the contradiction. One was called for a person hanging, the other one called for attempted suicide. Attempted suicide meaning they was not successful. So if they got there and my son wasn't successful, did they kill him? Something ain't right. Now you remember, neither one of them had to call their sergeant to get identified to who my son is. You remember that now. Let's go to this next one now. Let me see who we have here. Oh, this is the sergeant. This is the sergeant here. Let me see where we gonna start with him at. Now, I want you to listen to something because in the first video, the part 1 of this that I'm talking about right now, of my son speaking to me from the dead, this sergeant I forgot to put in the other one. The sergeant said he seen, I'm gonna read it to y'all. Let me see it on March. Let me see, that's where I want to start it. Let me see, y'all. I had it. Let me see. me find it, y'all. Okay, all right, let me just read where I want to, man. Okay, I'm going to read what he said. On March 19, 2021, at around 13:27 hours, officers was dispatched to an apartment complex located at 400 North Oakland Street. Residents in the apartment complex exited their apartment and located a man hanging from a belt which was wrapped around his neck and secured to a handrail in the common stairwell of the apartment building. Now, see, I talked to the Indians, and the Indians didn't say he was hung by a belt. They didn't know what he was hung by. All they seen was his feet and was scared. But let's go on. Paramedics with the Jackson County Ambulance Service responded and determined the male, later identified as Bryan Johns, no longer had any signs of life. Sergeant G, I'm going to tell you his name, Sergeant G. Draper, he's everywhere but my son at, was the shift sergeant at that time. Listen to what he says. I was in the Carbondale Police Department arrest area with an arrestee and made in another, arrestee and made, let me see where I'm a processing area with an arrest made on another citizen. I left the arrestee in the care of another officer and other officers and drove to North Oakland Avenue to supervise the investigation. As I drove to the scene, listen to this, officers radioed the fact that they suspected the male to be John's, but were questioning his identity. Now, he's saying that they radioed in to him, the supervising sergeant who was on his way over there, left whoever he arrested just then. He left him with some more officers, but he said the ones that's on the scene radioed him questioning the identity. Neither one of these individuals questioned. The first officer on the scene said he knew who my son was. The second one knew, but he got confirmation from the first. Now, let's go on. I radioed officers and informed them I seen Johns straddling a bicycle near East Main Street while I drove to work earlier that morning. I radioed that Johns was wearing, now look, what would he say what my son, listen to this here. I radioed Johns was wearing jeans in a gray hooded sweater when I saw him that morning. Officer Officer Blank was on scene and asked Visa Radio if Johns had a tattoo in the center of his head. Now, this same one he's saying asking that, this same one said he identified my son from the tattoo. He ain't said nothing about the sergeant. And he got confirmation from the other one. Sergeant ain't even on the scene yet. But listen to him continue to lie. I confirm he did, and PT confirmed the identity. Now, when I arrived, I found officers already. I don't even want to read that. What I want to read is something else. What this officer said, this sergeant said. He said him and another officers went to where he said he seen my son when he was on his way to work. It should have had it. Let me see. Oh yeah, I did read it. But at 7:14 and 54 seconds, 7:14 in the morning, he claimed he seen my son on North Wall, Wall, in East Main, M-A-I-N. He seen him on both of them corners. So what he did was, after he made it on the scene, him and some other officers, or one or two other officers, guess what they did? They went to that corner. That's what I forgot to put in my other thing. They went to them corners and they checked the pole that has the cameras. And guess what the camera seen? The camera seen Sergeant Gray, a Guy Draper, in his vehicle. But just mysteriously, guess who they didn't see straddling over a bike? Or did they see a bike? Or my son? It didn't see my son. Now, this was 7 in the morning. Now, I wonder why they didn't see my son. The camera didn't see my son, but they seen him. Now, listen to this. The first officer on the scene. Now, it's a detective told me that he assigned himself to my son's case on March the 25th, the day after I made my first YouTube video, when I came up there meeting with these neo-Nazis, these Ku Klux Klans, these white supremacists, Carbondale Police Department, in Jackson County Coroner Department. Now, this police that wrote the first one, look what he said. On 3, now you remember this was 319, the first one, when he came up the stairs and met the EMT, but the other one said he was with the EMT. Somebody lying. They can't change this shit now. Excuse my language, y'all. And I ain't even angry yet. God said you could be angry, but don't sin in your anger. Now listen to this same first police officer. Now he already made one report, but this is what he did now. He's saying, let me see. This one here said a time, and he got the time and the date on the top. March the 26th, the day after this sergeant told me he assigned himself, but when you read some of the sergeant stuff, he said he was assigned to it. It's a different than you assigning yourself and you being assigned to it. But let's get back to this guy here. This report here, the first one was on the 19th. This one here is March the 26th, 2021 at 17:16 hours, 100 hours, which would be 5:16. He said on March the 26th, 2021, I, Officer Blank, spoke with Sergeant Dunnigan. This is the one who told me, Dunnigan told me he assigned himself on March the 25th, the day after I made my complaints and put my YouTubes up. But then in his report, you will see where he's saying he was assigned to this. But he said, look here, the first officer, I, Officer Blank, spoke with Sergeant Dunnigan in reference to this case, and he requested, this is what the sergeant requested, I write a more detailed supplemental documenting my arrival. Why do he want him to supplement his arrival when he's a professional officer? He knew my son. He identified my son. You see what I'm saying? He said he was the first one on the scene, and he came up the stairwell, and the EMT, not the EMTs, they came, both of them simultaneously got on the same floor at the same time. But look, he changed his thing this time. The EMT didn't come through the door. He pushed the bar to let the EMT in now. Ain't that something? He had to change it around. Let me see where it had. Let me see. He said, upon arrival, I pulled into the parking lot on the west side of the building and was flagged down by resident of Blank from the outside balcony. I was the first responding officer to arrive on the scene and arrived on the west side of the building. I entered the western stairwell and cut through apartment Blank to the eastern stairwell, and as guided by the tended blank. So far, it's the same, ain't it? But you're going to see a change in it. I was ushered to the stairwell outside the eastern door of blank and saw a black male hanging from the railing above me. I saw no motion from the male and heard radio traffic. He done added shit on here now. He done heard radio traffic. Yeah, you gon' hear radio traffic if you got a damn radio on you. I worked on an ambulance. You see what I'm saying? He heard radio traffic in reference to the actual location of the call. I walked into the eastern door and used the push bar to open the door for EMS. So if he opened it up for the EMS, guess who else he should have opened it up? For the other officer that claimed he came up with the EMS. But look, I later reviewed crime scene photos and saw the door had a deadbolt lock, which was not locked it on March the 19th. They saying it wasn't locked on March the 19th. You know why? Because when me and the sergeant went down the 24th, he couldn't get in. So they looking at my video saying, how did my son get in there? But see, this is a bunch of mess. He didn't push the bar in the beginning. He didn't push the bar. But the sergeant looked at his report, and his report ain't coinciding with them. Ain't none of them saying that they call the sergeant, the Sergeant Draper is a beat sergeant, a foot soldier, you might as well say. He from Chicago too, y'all. From up there, you know where don't too many of us live. But I'm going to leave it at that. Just some of what to show you how they fabricating. What would your sergeant tell you to write a more detail when you gave a good detail? You came up one stairwell by yourself. The EMT met the EMT1 met you. He took a pulse. He felt him being cold. But now all of a sudden you push the bar to let him in. You ain't pushed nothing. Y'all pushed the wrong pin on the wrong black man. You see what I'm saying? My son is talking to me from the grave. And let me tell you who else talking to me from the grave. Hold on 1 minute. And that's the only person besides God that can give me orders. This who talking to me from the grave, y'all. Bryan Lamar's grandmother. That's Bertie Mae Ivy. My daughter's Bertie Mae Ivy II. But that's who talking to me from the grave too. She said, you bet not. She said, much as me and your daddy suffered down here in southeast Missouri with these racist white Ku Klux Klan misusing our parents and foreparents before that. Me and your daddy, when he got out of World War II, we moved to Chicago so y'all wouldn't have to put up with what happened to your son. And she said, son, you better not give up. Mama, I ain't giving up. You Ku Klux Klan, you white supremacists that's running Carbondale, Illinois Police Department, you white supremacists that's running City Hall, you white supremacists that's running the Jackson County, even though you Spanish, you just like them, that's running the Jackson County a prosecuting attorney's office, and you sell out. You can't get no worse than being either a coward or a sellout NAACP. Peace be still.